The first future in which I became a cultivator lasted 17 minutes. That was still 16 minutes longer than the future in which I obeyed my supervisor. I should probably explain. I had been 28 years old, an Iraqi hydraulic engineer in Baghdad, before a concrete inspection platform gave way beneath me. One moment I was looking at stress fractures beside a drainage channel. The next, I was choking on muddy water. Then I opened my eyes in another Baghdad. Same Tigris. Same brutal summer heat. Same smell of dust, grilled meat, hot stone, diesel-like lamp oil, and tea strong enough to qualify as a controlled substance. Different world. In this Baghdad, copper trams moved without horses. Blue symbols glowed beneath bridges. Licensed cultivators walked over the Tigris when they were showing off. People bought bottled river chi from pharmacies, and the city employed entire departments whose job was preventing jinn from nesting inside old waterworks. Apparently, civilization could discover immortality and still require municipal maintenance. My new name was also Yusuf Kareem, which saved me from one embarrassing adjustment. I was 22. I worked as a junior canal scribe for Baghdad's Eastern Water Office. And according to the memories that had arrived with this body, my supervisor, Nabil Fadl, hated me. That part became relevant 6 months after my transmigration, when he ordered me into the abandoned Saffron Gate regulator beneath the eastern floodwall. Gate 7 is jammed, he told me. Inspect it tomorrow before noon. I looked at the work order. No escort. No senior cultivator. No protective talisman. A structure closed for 34 years. Even in my previous world, that would have been suspicious. Here, old waterworks occasionally contained angry spirits. I asked whether he wanted me to die professionally or personally. Nabil did not laugh. Do your job. That evening, I returned to the tiny room I rented above a baker near the river and stared at the order for almost an hour. The original Yusuf had spent 3 years being called useless because he had almost no cultivation talent. Cultivation in this world depended on gathering river chi into channels inside the body. Most people compared those channels to roots. I didn't. I saw pipes. Their diagrams even looked like distribution networks. A cultivator formed a reservoir below the navel, circulated chi through 12 primary channels, then increased pressure until the body adapted. To everyone here, that was spiritual tradition. To me, it looked like a hydraulic system designed by someone who hated safety valves. Unfortunately, noticing that did not magically give me enough chi to matter. I had spent 6 months experimenting. Breathing slower helped. Alternating pressure helped. Never filling 2 narrow channels simultaneously helped. I had improved my circulation by about 18%. Wonderful. A professional cultivator could still have folded me into a travel-sized version of myself. So I went to sleep planning to refuse Nabil's order. At 2:13 in the morning, something spoke inside my head. Possible life function initialized. I sat upright so quickly that I hit my forehead on the shelf above the bed. 3 copper cups fell onto me. I ignored them. A translucent page had appeared in my vision. Only I could see it. At the top were 4 words. The Echo Ledger. Below them, one possible future may be observed. Current maximum duration, 7 days. Cooldown after termination, 90 minutes. Knowledge is retained. At survival thresholds, one acquired imprint may be preserved in reality. I read it 6 times. Then I said, simulate tomorrow. The room vanished. Not physically. I remained in bed. But another version of me appeared inside my mind with terrifying clarity. Day 1. I reported to Saffron Gate. At 10:06 in the morning, I descended 126 steps beneath the flood wall. At 10:24, I reached Gate 7. At 10:31, I turned the manual wheel exactly as instructed. At 10:32, the gate opened 8 centimeters. At 10:33, black water rushed backward through a supposedly dry channel. At 10:34, something inside it whispered my name. At 10:35, I died. The echo ledger closed. I sat in darkness. Then I looked at Nabal's work order. No. My voice came out surprisingly calm. No, I don't think I will. 90 minutes later, I simulated again. This time I refused the assignment. Nabal suspended me. At 11:40 the following morning, city guards searched my room and found 3 stolen regulator seals beneath my mattress. They arrested me. I had never seen the seals before. Nabal had. My second simulated life lasted 14 hours. Third attempt. I reported sick and left Baghdad by riverboat. At sunset, a tracking sigil hidden in the work order ignited. 2 cultivators from a group called the Black Reed Lodge found me before midnight. That life lasted 18 hours. I stopped treating Nabal like an unpleasant supervisor. He was trying to remove me. The interesting question was why. So I opened a notebook. Old engineering habits returned immediately. I wrote, Variable 1, obey order. Result, death beneath Gate 7. Variable 2, refuse. Result, planted evidence. Variable 3, flee. Result, tracked. Common cause, likely connected to Gate 7. Then I waited for the next cooldown. At 5:17 that morning, I began my 4th future. This time, I went a Saffron Gate. But I did not open anything. I measured pressure, temperature, chi density, sediment color, wall vibration. Exactly the kind of boring work Nabal apparently expected a frightened junior employee to skip. At the bottom of the eastern inspection shaft, I noticed something impossible. The supposedly dead channel had positive pressure. Water was not trying to enter Gate 7. Something behind Gate 7 was trying to get out. I followed the pressure gradient to a maintenance chamber and discovered 3 smaller bypass valves buried beneath 30 years of mineral scale. My simulated self opened them in sequence. First 12 degrees, then 21, then 9. Pressure dropped. The black water behind Gate 7 retreated. I survived noon, then sunset, then an entire day. On day 2, I scraped sediment from the oldest bypass pipe and found faint bronze lettering beneath it. On day 3, I realized the letters were not words. They were a flow diagram. On day 5, I followed it into an abandoned sublevel. On day 6, I found a sealed bronze cylinder taller than my forearm. On day 7, I was still alive. The echo ledger froze. Threshold reached. Select 1 acquired imprint. 3 choices appeared. Green, strong back. Blue, flow sense. Purple, fortunate detour. Strong back increased physical endurance. Fortunate detour occasionally nudged me away from lethal situations, although the description politely mentioned that detours may contain alternative danger. I had lived in Iraq long enough to distrust any route described as an alternative detour. So I chose flow sense. The moment I confirmed it, something changed inside my real body. I could hear the building's water pipes. Not literally. I could feel where pressure moved through them. The sensation extended into the street, into the old clay pipes beneath it. Then farther, toward the Tigris. A gigantic, invisible current seemed to breathe beneath Baghdad. I stood beside my bed, absolutely still. 6 months after waking in a world of cultivation, I had finally obtained something unfair. And the man trying to kill me had no idea. By sunrise, I had a plan. Not a heroic plan. Heroic plans are what people make when they haven't been responsible for infrastructure. I had a maintenance plan. My childhood friend in this world, Omar Salim, met me beside the eastern floodwall at 7:10. Omar was 23, broad-shouldered, permanently covered in sawdust, and employed at his father's riverboat workshop. He also possessed the valuable quality of asking only one question when I requested 2 hand pumps, 60 meters of hose, a pressure gauge, 3 lamps, and a breakfast bag containing bread, eggs, dates, and enough tea for 4 people. Are we getting arrested? Probably not. He considered that good enough. I had never told Omar that I came from another world. Try explaining alternate universe hydraulic engineering before breakfast. I had told him that Nabil was setting me up. That was sufficient. We entered Saffron Gate through a maintenance door at 8:04. Flow sense changed everything. What had looked like random pipes and dead masonry during my first inspection now formed a living network inside my perception. Some channels carried ordinary water. Some carried chi. Several carried both. Gate 7 was not merely a flood regulator. It was a pressure lock between 2 separate systems, which meant opening it without balancing them was the spiritual equivalent of removing a dam because the door looked stuck. I found the 3 bypass valves exactly where the simulation had shown me. Omar stared as I chipped away scale. You've been here before. No. You walked directly to them. I have excellent instincts. You once got lost inside my father's workshop. Those boats all look alike. They are different colors. I opened the first valve. Pressure shifted. The second. A vibration beneath our feet disappeared. The third. Flow sense suddenly expanded. Something deep under Baghdad noticed me. Not aggressively. More like I had knocked on a door that had not been used in a very long time. We reached the hidden sublevel before 10. The bronze cylinder was waiting inside a chamber lined with fired brick. No dramatic altar. No skeleton. No glowing mountain of treasure. Just a corroded piece of equipment bolted between 2 pipes. I liked it immediately. Omar looked disappointed. That's the treasure. I never said treasure. You brought me underground before breakfast. We ate breakfast. Underground. Fair point. The cylinder had 9 rings around its body. Each ring contained tiny channels. Hydraulic logic again. I rotated them until the pathways aligned. The cylinder opened. Inside sat a palm-sized disc of dark blue glass. The echo ledger reacted. Ancient simulation component detected. Compatibility confirmed. Would you like to integrate Fludgeless? I almost answered yes immediately. Then I remembered that my first 4 simulations had included 2 murders, 1 arrest, and 1 supernatural drowning. I had become noticeably less spontaneous. I waited 90 minutes. Then I simulated touching it. In that future, Fludgeless drained nearly all my chi. Since I barely had any, I collapsed. Omar carried me upstairs while insulting every ancestor responsible for my decision-making. I recovered after 6 hours. More importantly, the echo ledger upgraded. Maximum simulation duration increased from 7 days to 30. Imprint quality increased. So in reality, I touched Fludgeless. The drain was worse than expected. There are certain experiences that teach humility. One of them is waking with your face on an ancient brick floor while your best friend is pouring water on you and shouting, "I knew it. I knew the glass was evil." It isn't evil. You fainted. Technically, I suffered acute energy depletion. You fainted professionally. The upgraded ledger opened inside my vision. Fludgeless integration complete. New function, measurement recall. New rule, simulated technical observations may be recalled with perfect accuracy. That was almost more valuable than power. A normal person could remember that an enemy used a dangerous technique. I could remember pressure values, sequence timing, dimensions, inscriptions, chemical smells, cultivation circulation patterns, and every mistake leading to failure. The engineer inside me nearly became emotional. Then Flow Sense detected movement above us. 5 people had entered Saffron Gate. One was Nabil. The other 4 carried more chi than he did. Black Reed Lodge. We extinguished our lamps and listened. Nabil's voice carried down the stairwell. The boy should already be dead. One of the strangers replied, "Then recover the core before the evening rise." Core? So that was what they wanted. Fludgeless was not the treasure. Something deeper was. Omar looked at me. I looked at him. His expression said we should leave. Mine probably said I wanted 27 more measurements. He grabbed my sleeve. For once, friendship defeated engineering. We left through an overflow tunnel. That afternoon, Nabil summoned me to the water office. He looked genuinely surprised to see me alive. I enjoyed that more than I should have. You completed the inspection. I inspected Gate 7. Did you open it? No. His jaw tightened. The order required functional testing. The order says inspect. I placed the paper between us. Opening is not inspection. He leaned closer. You are a junior scribe. Yes. You do not interpret my orders. Then you should write clearer orders. There are moments when intelligence tells you to remain silent. Unfortunately, personality occasionally reaches the controls first. Nabil's eyes became very flat. Tomorrow at 6:00 a.m., you will return with my team and open Gate 7. I already knew what happened if I obeyed badly. I wanted to know what happened if I obeyed well. So I smiled. Of course. That evening, my 5th simulation began. I followed Nabil's team into Saffron Gate. This time, I let them open Gate 7. The backward surge struck exactly as predicted. But because I had already balanced the bypass channels, nobody died. That annoyed them. They descended farther. Behind Gate 7 lay an ancient stone conduit large enough for 3 men to walk side by side. The black reed cultivators followed it. On day 2, they found the chamber they wanted. On day 3, Nabil signed something with them. On day 4, I learned what. Saffron Gate sat above a buried stream of concentrated river chi. The Black Reed Lodge intended to tap it illegally. Nabil had spent 6 years falsifying maintenance records, so the area would remain classified as useless. He had arranged my death because the original Yusuf had unknowingly copied one of the old pressure reports. He thought I had seen too much. I hadn't, but he had now made absolutely certain that I would. My simulated self survived 21 days before Black Reed realized I had been recording their flow rates. They caught me outside the city. I died. The Echo Ledger reopened. No 30-day threshold. No new imprint. Just 21 days of information. I smiled anyway. For the first time since Nabil had handed me that order, I was no longer trying to escape his plan. I was studying it. I used the next 6 simulations like laboratory tests, one variable at a time. That discipline saved me from becoming addicted to dramatic solutions. In one future, I reported Black Reed immediately. The investigator assigned to the complaint was Nabil's cousin. That life lasted 3 days. In another, I took the evidence to a cultivator clan in western Baghdad. They believed me. They also decided the buried river source should belong to them. That life lasted 11 days. I tried selling the coordinates. 4 days. Leaving Iraq entirely. 9 days. Pretending ignorance. 26 days. Joining Black Reed. 30 days. That one was interesting. I hated them. But simulated lives were not reality, and information mattered more than pride. The Black Reed Lodge specialized in pressure cultivation. Their disciples forced huge amounts of river chi through their channels, strengthening them through repeated strain. It worked. It also damaged nearly every practitioner over 40. They called the shaking hands, shortened breath, and memory loss the price of strength. I called it chronic system failure. During that simulated month, I discovered their cultivation manuals were based on an ancient river engineering text. Badly translated. They had taken instructions for testing emergency pressure tolerance and turned them into a daily cultivation method. That was like discovering a civilization doing fire drills by setting the building on fire every morning. I copied every circulation pattern into measurement recall. On day 30, my simulated self survived. 3 imprints appeared. Green, reed step. Blue, pressure resistance. Purple, quiet reservoir. Quiet reservoir had a strange description. When cultivation remains below public detection, internal stability improves continuously. I read it twice, then chose it. I had spent 6 months being underestimated. Apparently, I could now cultivate by continuing the tradition. The imprint settled into my body. For the first time, the chi inside my lower abdomen stopped leaking away between breaths. The original Yusuf's problem had never been lack of chi. His reservoir had been porous. Every technique he practiced filled it faster than it could stabilize. Quiet reservoir changed that. Not dramatically. Not instantly. It simply prevented waste. That night, I sat cross-legged on the floor and redesigned cultivation from first principles. Everyone else treated the body like a vessel to fill. I treated it like Baghdad's water network. A reservoir without controlled inflow was useless. A channel without pressure relief eventually cracked. A closed valve created stagnation. A system became stronger not when every part held maximum pressure, but when pressure moved efficiently. I built a circulation pattern with 3 loops. Primary loop. Return loop. Emergency bypass. It was slower than Black Reed cultivation. For the first 20 minutes, nothing happened. At 31 minutes, flow sense turned inward. I felt my own channels. Narrow. Uneven. Several partially blocked. I adjusted breathing until the chi moved around those restrictions, instead of striking them repeatedly. 1 hour later, my reservoir expanded. First basin. The lowest recognized cultivation stage in Iraq. A stage children from wealthy families sometimes reached at 15. I was 22. I nearly laughed from happiness. Progress does not become less meaningful because someone else achieved it sooner. By sunrise, I could lift a full water jar one-handed without strain. More importantly, I could finally feed a trace of chi into fludgeless without feeling faint. The next simulations accelerated. I spent one future apprenticed to a healer in Kadhimiya and learned how channel scars formed. I died on day 18. Useful. I spent another future hiding in the marshes south of Baghdad, learning to gather diffused qi instead of concentrated river qi. 29 days. Annoying. Then I survived 30 days working beside an elderly canal cultivator named Hadi Musa. Hadi was considered mediocre. He had never passed second basin, but he had maintained river wards for 52 years without suffering a single channel injury. His technique used tiny pulses. Everyone mocked it for being weak. I recognized pulse width control. I learned everything. The ledger offered green, good balance; blue, long breath; purple, keeper's pulse. I took keeper's pulse. When it settled into reality, I nearly doubled the precision with which I could release qi. That became my second true milestone. Not more power, less waste. The difference was enormous. I could now push a cup across the table with a thread of qi without cracking the cup. Most first basin cultivators could throw the cup across the room. Very impressive. Then they needed another cup. Omar became my unwilling test assistant. I told him to stack 12 copper washers. I used qi to move them individually. The first attempt knocked all 12 onto the floor. The second sent one into his tea. The third balanced 3. By the end of the evening, I could stack all 12. Omar watched silently. Is this cultivation? Yes. It looks like accounting. That is because you lack vision. It looks like very powerful accounting. I accepted the compliment. The real confrontation with Nabil finally came 4 days later. He arrived at Saffron Gate with 6 black reed cultivators and a legal seizure order. I had simulated that morning 7 times. Every path in which I openly resisted ended badly. So I did exactly what Nabil demanded. I stepped aside. He smiled. Finally learning your position. Absolutely. That answer worried him more than defiance would have. They entered. I stayed outside with Omar. At 7:40 in the evening, the Tigris rose 11 centimeters. Exactly as measurement recall predicted. Black Reed opened their illegal extraction line. Pressure reversed. But this time, I had not balanced their bypasses. I had balanced the cities. The surge had only one available direction. Into Black Reed's private equipment. Their expensive gathering array overloaded within 12 seconds. Copper rods shot sparks. Storage jars cracked. 3 months of stolen river qi vented harmlessly into the official settling basin. Nobody died. I had made sure of that. Financial ruin was sufficient. Nabil stumbled out of Saffron Gate 20 minutes later, soaked to the waist and shouting my name. I held up the maintenance log. You ordered me not to interfere. He stopped. Omar made a choking sound that was definitely not laughter. Nabil pointed at the ruined equipment behind him. You did this. No, I did nothing. For once, that was literally true. I followed your order exactly. And for the first time, Nabil looked at me not as a weak junior employee. He looked at me as a problem. Black Reed lost more than equipment that night. Their extraction attempt woke the buried river source. For the next 3 days, Flow Sense could feel something pulsing beneath eastern Baghdad. Not water. Not ordinary qi. Something older. Every simulation that approached the source ended differently. In one, I found a chamber filled with blue crystals. In another, the chamber contained no crystals at all. In a third, a stone staircase descended where the wall should have been. In a fourth, I walked into the chamber and emerged in Basra 9 days later with no memory of the journey. That was new. The echo ledger simulated probabilities. Until then, small changes produced understandable branches. The buried source did not behave like probability. It behaved like a junction. On my 15th simulation since acquiring Fludgeless, the ledger changed again. Duration limit, 100 days. Cooldown 4 hours. Warning, extended echoes may produce identity strain. That sounded bad. I started one anyway. This time I entered the hidden chamber alone. On day 1, I found the staircase. It descended 340 steps. At the bottom flowed a river. An actual river. Underground. It ran beneath Baghdad from north to south, glowing faintly blue in complete darkness. Its banks were lined with ancient brick. The construction was too precise to be natural. I followed it. Day 2. No exit. Day 3. Still walking. Day 4. I reached an underground station containing stone docks and bronze rings large enough to moor ships. Day 5. I found writing. Not Arabic. Not any script I knew. But Fludgeless translated its structural meaning. Baghdad distribution node. Surface network degraded. Primary channel access restricted. I stared at those words inside the simulation. Baghdad was a node. Not a source. A node in what? I kept moving. Day 8. The underground river divided into 12 channels. Day 12. I encountered my first guardian. It looked like a man made from wet clay. I tried speaking. It struck me once. I died. 12 days. 4 hours later, I tried again. This time I approached without cultivating. The guardian ignored me. Quiet reservoir concealed my strength. I walked past. Day 20. I found a chamber containing cultivation diagrams. Not 12 channels. 36. The human body diagrams used secondary pathways, modern Iraqi cultivation manuals, did not even name. My engineering instincts went wild. Modern cultivators were running their entire internal network through 12 main lines, while leaving 24 smaller channels practically unused. Of course, pressure damage was common. They had deleted 2/3 of the distribution network. I spent 63 simulated days learning. Not cultivating. Learning. At day 64, I made the first attempt at opening a secondary channel. It nearly stopped my heart. I survived because Keeper's Pulse allowed me to shut the flow instantly. Day 70. Second attempt. Better. Day 78. First secondary channel opened. Day 89. Third. Day 99. I reached the underground Baghdad station again and placed my hand against a sealed bronze gate. The gate recognized the circulation pattern. It opened. Day 100. The echo ledger froze. 3 imprints appeared. Blue, secondary channel awareness. Purple, 36 channel body. Orange, confluence memory. My heartbeat accelerated. 36 channel body would permanently reshape my internal system toward the ancient pattern. Confluence memory did something stranger. Skills learned across multiple possible lives could merge into one coherent instinct. That was absurd. It meant every simulated teacher, every failed cultivation attempt, every variation of technique could stop feeling like separate memories. They could become experience. I chose confluence memory. The effect was immediate. For several seconds, I forgot where I was. I remembered 57 years of experiences that had never happened. maintaining canals with Hattie, hiding from Black Reed, living in the southern marshes, learning healing, opening secondary channels, dying, again, again, again. Then the memory settled, not as trauma, as context. My real hands moved. Keeper's pulse changed. The tiny technique I had copied from an old maintenance cultivator combined with Black Reed pressure control, healing knowledge, flow sense, and ancient channel theory. What emerged was mine. I called it Tigress circulation. Omar objected to the name. You cannot name everything after the river. Watch me. Within 6 real days, I opened 7 secondary channels. My cultivation passed first basin peak and entered second basin without the violent pressure breakthrough everyone considered necessary. Then third basin. That should have required years. It took 11 days. The water office's measuring stone failed when I tested it. Not exploded. That would have been dramatic. It displayed second basin, then third, then second, then an error symbol resembling a disappointed camel. The clerk hit it twice. It is old. I agree. Come back next month. Excellent. Quiet Reservoir approved of this entire conversation. My official rank remained first basin. Nabble found that comforting. Black Reed did not. They had recovered from the ruined extraction attempt and realized their problem was no longer the lost equipment. It was me. Nabble came to my room personally. No threats this time. He offered money. 40,000 silver dinars. More than 5 years of my salary. All I had to do was transfer my maintenance rights at Saffron Gate and sign a statement saying the failed extraction array had been installed without his knowledge. I asked whether he had brought the statement. He slid it across my table. I read it carefully. Then I smiled. Of course. His shoulders relaxed. I signed. Omar nearly fell out of his chair. Nabble collected the paper and left. The moment the door closed, Omar stared at me. You just gave him Saffron Gate. Yes. Why? Because tomorrow morning, the water office reclassifies it. Into what? I poured more tea. An active ancient infrastructure site. Omar slowly smiled. And maintenance rights cannot be privately transferred. So your signature transfers nothing. And his statement confirms he knew private equipment existed there. Omar raised his cup. Powerful accounting. I raised mine. Exactly. The reclassification should have been the end of Nabble. Instead, it became the beginning of the larger problem. At 9:00 the next morning, 3 senior inspectors, 12 city cultivators, and 1 representative from the Baghdad River Council arrived at Saffron Gate. Nabble arrived too. He looked pale. Black Reed did not appear. They were smarter than him. The council representative was Layla Nuri, 24, an archivist whose job was technically to catalog ancient water infrastructure. Within 5 minutes, I realized she was more dangerous than most cultivators I had met. She asked good questions. Who reopened Bypass 3? I did. Why 12 degrees? Pressure balance. Based on which chart? None. She looked at me. I corrected myself. None currently recognized. That changed her expression. We spent 4 hours underground. At the ancient Baghdad station, Layla stopped joking entirely. She recognized several symbols. Not their meaning. Their age. These predate the current river schools, she whispered. By how much? At least 2,000 years. Omar looked around. So nobody knows what this place does. Layla frowned. That is a very irresponsible summary. But accurate. Unfortunately, we reached the sealed bronze gate from my 100-day simulation. The real gate was exactly where I remembered. Nabal was behind us with the senior inspectors. Perfect. I placed my palm against the bronze. Nothing happened. For one embarrassing second, I wondered whether the ancient system had rejected my real body. Then I began Tigra circulation. 1 channel. 3. 12. 19. 28. 36. The gate opened. Nobody spoke. Beyond it stood a circular hall larger than Saffron Gate itself. A model of Iraq covered the floor. Not a map painted on stone. A living network of blue light. The Tigris glowed. The Euphrates glowed. Tiny nodes shone at Mosul, Baghdad, Samarra, Karbala, Najaf, Nasiriyah, Amara, Basra, and dozens of smaller locations. Several were dark. Others flickered. At the southern edge near Basra, one pulsed bright gold. Ancient words appeared above the model. Fludglas translated them for me. Baghdad Auxiliary Node, Arisuanenicitid. Keeper status, provisional. Network integrity, 11.4%. Next stable node, Basra Confluence. Layla whispered, "What does it say?" Before I could answer, Nabal pushed past her. "This belongs to the water office." The floor reacted. A blue ring appeared beneath his feet. Identity unregistered. Access DNID. Nabal stepped back. The ring vanished. He looked at me. Then at the floor. Then back at me. It was a quiet moment. Much better than shouting. For 6 months, he had treated me like disposable labor. Now a 2,000-year-old system had recognized me and rejected him in front of the people whose approval supported his entire career. His face told me he understood exactly what had changed. Unfortunately, he reacted badly. He reached for the central control pillar. The chamber responded. A pressure wave threw him backward. Not hard enough to injure him seriously. Hard enough to remove his dignity. One senior inspector grabbed him. "Stop touching things." I admit I enjoyed that sentence. Then the model changed. A red line spread north from Basra. Layla leaned forward. "That cannot be good." Fludglas translated. Confluence pressure increasing. Failure estimate, 46 days. Surface consequence, severe. The room fell silent. Nabal's career suddenly stopped mattering. Baghdad's hidden station was not the important discovery. Basra was. And whatever ancient civilization had built this network expected someone to maintain it. The River Council suspended Nabal that afternoon. The documents he had signed, including the one I had so generously provided, gave investigators enough evidence to uncover 6 years of falsified maintenance work. Black Reed's equipment was traced. Their extraction permits were frozen. 3 officials resigned before anyone asked them to. I did not celebrate much. I had spent months wanting consequences. When they arrived, they felt smaller than I expected. Maybe because I had changed. Or maybe because an ancient system had just informed me that a major river node could fail in 46 days. That tends to rearrange priorities. Nabal requested to speak with me before the guards escorted him away from the water office. He looked exhausted. "I underestimated you." "Yes." He waited, perhaps expecting something more dramatic. "I had nothing." Finally he asked, "How long have you been planning this?" I thought about 27 simulated deaths, imaginary decades, failed futures, and the notebook under my bed. Long enough. He looked almost frightened. That was the first moment I understood how strange my power appeared from outside. For me, every step had been uncertain. For him, I had walked through his trap, survived the impossible gate, predicted the surge, let him sign his own evidence, reopened an ancient station and become its recognized keeper. He had seen only the successful timeline. He had not seen the failures that purchased it. That night, the echo ledger opened again. New designation recognized. Provisional keeper. Maximum simulation duration, 1 year. Cooldown, 24 hours. Warning, long echoes increase personality integration cost. 1 year. I stared at the number. Then at the golden Basra node in my memory. Baghdad had once felt like the entire cultivation world. Now it looked like one station on a map. We traveled south 6 days later. The River Council provided a fast government vessel. Omar came because the ancient gates used mechanical components and because, according to him, someone has to stop you touching suspicious glass. Layla came because she had spent 8 years studying ancient river records and would apparently rather be thrown into the Tigris than miss the largest discovery of her career. I did not argue. The trip changed my understanding of the country before we ever reached Basra. With flow sense, the Tigris no longer felt like water. It felt alive. Every tributary altered its spiritual pressure. Every old canal diverted small amounts of chi. Towns created disturbances where cultivators gathered. Ancient bridges contained structures that modern engineers thought decorative, but were actually stabilizers. The world I had lived in for 6 months had been full of machinery nobody understood. At Cut, I began my first 1-year simulation. I wanted information about Basra. The echo lasted 83 days. I died inside the southern marshes. After entering a fog zone, I had been specifically warned not to enter. That one was entirely my fault. The next day, I simulated again. 211 days. I learned that the Basra confluence was protected by a group called the Marsh Wardens. They were not a sect. They did not care about prestige. Their work involved stabilizing chi flows through the wetlands, guiding spirit creatures away from villages, and keeping the ancient network from pulling salt energy inland from the Gulf. Their weakest active warden was 4th Basin. Their senior members were beyond 5th. In Baghdad, 5th Basin cultivators ran schools. Here they maintained channels. My local understanding of power quietly collapsed. The most experienced warden in the simulation was Hassan Rahim. He was 62, lean, sun-darkened, and unimpressed by almost everything. In that simulated life, he examined my cultivation for 9 seconds. Then he asked, "Who damaged your channels?" "No one." "You have opened 36. "Yes." "That is why I asked." He explained that modern cultivation had not forgotten the secondary channels accidentally. Most bodies could not tolerate opening all of them. The ancient keepers had specialized physiques. Trying to imitate them killed people. My survival should have been impossible. Confluence memory had allowed me to combine hundreds of small adaptations from simulated lives until my body gradually learned what ancient keepers were born able to do. I was not following their path. I had reverse engineered it. That simulation lasted 302 days before the Basra node failed. The entire underground network destabilized. I died. 1-year threshold not reached. No imprint. But now I knew the failure mechanism. The Basra confluence contained 9 gates. 8 still functioned. Gate 9 had been sealed for centuries. Pressure entering the node had increased gradually because 3 northern stabilizers were dead. Modern wardens compensated manually. That worked until it didn't. In 39 days, the compensation would reach its limit. I began another simulation. This one lasted the entire year. I worked with Hassan instead of trying to solve everything myself. That choice mattered. In previous lives, I kept assuming information was enough. It wasn't. Hassan understood spirit tides. Layla understood inscriptions. Omar understood mechanical tolerances. I understood networks. For the first time, I stopped treating simulations like puzzles where I was the only piece that moved. On day 367, the ledger offered 4 imprints. Green marsh step. Blue salt resistance. Purple network mind. Orange river architect. I could barely breathe. River architect allowed intuitive understanding of interconnected chi systems. It was the obvious choice, which made me suspicious. I read network mind again. It allowed me to track many simultaneous flows without losing concentration. Less glamorous, more practical. I chose network mind. The echo ledger confirmed the selection. For several seconds, every pipe, canal, river branch, meridian, and chi current I had ever studied arranged itself inside my awareness. Not as separate things, as systems. I understood why river architect had been bait. I was not ready for intuition without limits. Network mind increased what I could safely process. The ledger was not merely rewarding power. It was offering temptation. That realization stayed with me when we finally reached Basra. Hassan Rahim was waiting on the dock, exactly as in the simulations. He looked at Omar, then Layla, then me. His eyes narrowed. You. I froze. In none of the previous echoes had he greeted me like that. Have we met? No. He stepped closer. But something around you remembers me. For the first time since obtaining the echo ledger, I felt genuine fear of being discovered. Hassan studied my face, then shrugged. Whatever it is, it smells tired. Omar coughed to hide laughter. I hated both of them for approximately 4 seconds. Hassan turned toward the marsh channels. Come, Baghdad says you opened the old station. I did. That makes you either useful or dangerous. Those are not mutually exclusive. He looked back. For the first time, he smiled. Good, you may survive here. Basra humbled me quickly. That was healthy. My first morning at the confluence, a 16-year-old warden named Sami moved a stranded cargo boat by redirecting current chi with one hand. I had spent weeks feeling impressive because I could move copper washers. Perspective is violent. The Basra node lay beneath an old riverside complex where brick tunnels met huge stone chambers. 9 ancient gates surrounded a circular reservoir. Each gate represented one incoming spiritual flow. Fresh water, groundwater, marsh chi, deep earth current, storm current, salt current, and 3 flows modern wardens had names for but did not fully understand. Gate 9 remained sealed beneath layers of mineral crystal. The pressure behind it increased every day. I examined it with flow sense, then network mind, then fludgeless. Nothing. The gate did not register as closed. It registered as absent. That distinction bothered me. Layla found the first clue in a storage archive. Ancient diagrams showed 10 gates. Not 9. We counted the chamber again. 9. Omar tapped the wall between Gate 3 and Gate 4. There. I felt it too. A blank section. No pipe. No chi. Nothing. In an active network, nothing is information. We cleared the wall. Behind 40 centimeters of later brickwork sat another bronze door. Gate 0. Hassan stared at it. That was not in any warden record. Layla looked almost offended. Because someone deliberately removed it from the plans. That changed the problem. Gate 9 was not failing. The system was compensating for a missing control path. Someone had sealed Gate 0. Then generations of wardens had mistaken the resulting imbalance for normal operation. I began a simulation that night. In the first echo, we opened Gate 0. Basra confluence collapsed in 43 seconds. I died. Second echo. We tried balancing all 9 gates first. 17 minutes. Third. We drained the central reservoir. 3 hours. Fourth. We opened Gate 0 by 1 millimeter. Nothing happened for 2 days. Then the entire underground river reversed. Day 3. Dead. We needed more information. So I stopped chasing the gate. I simulated a different life. I spent 7 months studying with the wardens. No emergency work. No forbidden doors. Just training. It felt wasteful for about 5 minutes. Then Hassan taught me how to feel salt chi without absorbing it. Sami taught me marsh stepping. Layla reconstructed ancient terminology. Omar discovered the bronze gates contained mechanical governors beneath their magical surfaces. Each of them found things I had missed. On month 5, I reached 4th basin. On month 6, I learned the truth about cultivation ranks. 1st through 5th basin were not the full system. They were the 5 preparatory stages. Ancient keepers called them dry channels. True cultivation began after the reservoir connected directly to a natural current. Modern schools had lost that step. Their strongest practitioners simply kept compressing more chi into themselves. They were building larger tanks instead of connecting to the river. I laughed for almost a minute. Hassan asked what was funny. Nothing. It was not nothing. Baghdad's most terrifying cultivators were essentially extremely reinforced water barrels. I attempted the ancient connection on simulated day 243. My reservoir touched the Tigris. Power flooded through me. Not chi stored inside my body. Chi moving through it. For 1.8 seconds, I understood what true cultivation meant. Then every channel ruptured simultaneously. I died. Useful. The next simulation, I reduced contact to 0.2 seconds. Survived. Next. 0.4. Next. 0.7. 23 possible lives later, I found the stable threshold. Keeper's pulse. 36 channels. Network mind. Quiet reservoir. Everything I had accumulated suddenly aligned. I connected. The Tigris entered me without entering me. There is no good ordinary language for it. Imagine standing in a river while also being the riverbed. Power moved through my reservoir, but it did not remain. My body became part of the circuit. The echo ledger displayed a designation I had never seen. Open current. My lifespan projection jumped from 164 years to 612. I sat in the real Basra station after that simulation, staring at the words. Then I laughed. Omar looked up from a gate mechanism. What now? Apparently, I have been cultivating incorrectly. You discovered cultivation 2 months ago. Exactly, embarrassing. I achieved open current in reality 9 days later. Hassan felt it from 3 rooms away. He arrived without sandals. That frightened me more than any dramatic entrance. He stared. I tried to hide my cultivation. Quiet reservoir activated. The river pressure vanished from perception. Hassan closed his eyes. Then opened them. You did it. Did what? He pointed toward the door. The water outside changed direction for half a breath. Reasonable evidence. By then, 28 days remained before the predicted confluence failure. And my success created a new problem. The moment I reached open current, Gate 0 activated. A line of ancient text appeared across its surface. Fludgeless translated. Keeper candidate confirmed. Ecodet exceeds safe limit. Confluence trial required. I read it 3 times. Ecodet. The ledger opened by itself. Permanent imprints retained, 7. Integrated simulated lifespan, 43 years, 8 months, 11 days. Identity divergence, 18.6%. Recommended action, resolve before next major network connection. My stomach dropped. The simulator had never been free. Every possible life I absorbed had left something behind. I stopped simulating. That decision lasted 2 days. Then pressure behind Gate 0 increased by 6%. The Basra failure clock dropped from 26 days to 19. Hassan wanted to know what I was hiding. I hated the question because he deserved the answer. So did Omar. So did Layla. For months, I had used the ledger to protect everyone while telling myself secrecy was necessary. Sometimes it was. Sometimes it was simply easier. That night, the 4 of us sat beside the river with tea and flatbread, while fishing lamps moved across the dark water. I told them everything. My first world. My death. Waking in another Yusuf's body. The echo ledger. The simulated futures. My imprints. My deaths. All of them. Omar remained silent longer than I expected. Then he punched my shoulder. Not hard. You died how many times? Simulated deaths. How many? I stopped counting after 30. He punched me again. Layla looked pale. You remember them. Most. And you thought this was not worth mentioning. In fairness. No. I accepted that. Hassan was the quietest. Finally he asked, when you look at me, how many versions do you see? That question hurt. Because the answer was not one. I remembered Hassan laughing. Hassan dying. Hassan teaching me. Hassan distrusting me. Hassan never meeting me. 43 years of lives compressed inside one mind. I don't know anymore. He nodded. There is your real problem. Not Gate 0. Not cultivation. Me. The next morning, Layla found the explanation. Gate 0 was not a water gate. It was a confluence chamber for keepers. Ancient candidates trained by living possible lives through fludgeless. Exactly like me. But they normally preserved one imprint, completed a confluence trial, then began again. I had accumulated 7 without ever clearing the debt. Because my soul came from another world, Fludgeless had mistaken my unusually flexible identity for high compatibility. Translation. The machine thought I was much more qualified than I actually was. I found that strangely relatable. The trial required me to enter Gate 0 and unify the possible selves I had retained. If I succeeded, Echo Det would reset and the Basra control path would reopen. If I failed, I could lose the imprints. Or pieces of myself. Omar crossed his arms. Good system. It is 2,000 years old. Still bad. We had 17 days. I wanted more information. But every additional simulation increased the debt. For the first time, my greatest advantage had become the thing I could not safely use. I tried solving Gate Zero without it. 3 days. No progress. Pressure rose. 14 days. Hassan's wardens began evacuating sensitive storage areas. 12 days. Salt chi appeared in freshwater channels. 10 days. Spirit fish started leaving one marsh branch entirely. 8. The River Council requested emergency assistance from Baghdad. 7. I finally understood the choice. The Echo Ledger had trained me to avoid irreversible risk. That had saved my life. It had also taught me the wrong lesson. Not every uncertainty could be simulated away. At some point, reality demanded a decision. I stood before Gate Zero with Omar, Layla, and Hassan behind me. Omar handed me a small brass wrench. My father's best one. I stared at him. What am I supposed to do with this? Nothing, but you always relax when holding a tool. Annoyingly accurate. Layla handed me a Kopit inscription. You were right about one thing. Only one. Do not ruin the moment. I shut my mouth. She tapped the line she had translated. A keeper does not command the river. A keeper gives every current somewhere to go. That sentence connected everything. Bypass valves. Secondary channels. Pressure relief. Simulations. Possible selves. I had spent months choosing futures. Rejecting bad ones. Keeping useful pieces. Trying to create one perfect path. Maybe that was the wrong model. A river did not choose one tributary. It accepted all of them. I placed my hand against Gate Zero. The Echo Ledger appeared. Confluence trial. No simulation. No replay. No second attempt. Proceed. For once, I did not wait for a cooldown. Yes. The gate opened. I expected another chamber. Instead, I entered my own lives. All of them. I stood inside Saffron Gate and watched myself drown. Then I was arrested. Then hunted. Then hiding in the marshes. Then studying with Hattie. Then joining Black Reed. Then dying in Baghdad. Then learning with Hassan. Then reaching open current. Years moved around me. Some versions of Yusuf hated Nabil enough to want him destroyed. Some barely remembered him. Some loved Baghdad. Some wanted to leave Iraq forever. Some trusted Omar completely. Others had pushed him away to keep him safe. One Yusuf had spent 11 simulated months alone and become so cautious he barely spoke. Another had become powerful quickly and arrogant enough to die because of it. They were not memories anymore. They were people. Possible people. Possible me. The trial's purpose became obvious. Choose which one was real. I almost did. Engineer Yusuf. Careful Yusuf. The version that solved problems before acting. That felt safest. Then I remembered Layla's translation. A keeper gives every current somewhere to go. So I refused to choose. I opened Tigris circulation. 36 channels. Then the secondary loops. Then every emergency bypass I had developed. I treated memory like flow. Fear moved through one route. Ambition through another. Grief through another. Knowledge. Pride. Humor. Anger. I stopped trying to erase contradiction. People are contradictory. Apparently, so are transmigrated engineers with 43 years of imaginary trauma. Pressure rose. The echo ledger warned me. Identity divergence, 31%. 42. 43. At 63%, one of my possible selves shouted that I was making a mistake. At 71, I agreed with him. At 78, another version tried to seize control. I gave him a channel too. At 86, the entire internal network shook. I remembered every death simultaneously. Water, heat, darkness, impact, loneliness, failure. Then Omar's ridiculous brass wrench pressed into my palm. Reality. One object. One friend. One life happening now. I held on to that. Not to reject the others. To give them a center. The percentage stopped at 89.4. Then fell. 82. 83. 84. 85. 86. 0. The possible Yusufs did not disappear. They aligned. Confluence memory changed. No longer separate experiences. Experience. Mine. The echo ledger opened. Trial complete. Echo deck cleared. 7. Retained imprints integrated permanently. New designation. Confluence keeper. New restriction. One major simulation every 7 real days. New benefit. At the conclusion of a qualified echo, one learned ability may be integrated without identity divergence. New limit. Destiny-scale decisions cannot be simulated beyond the point of irreversible choice. I laughed. Even ancient magical technology eventually installed responsible use limits. Then Gate 0 opened fully. Reality returned. I was standing in Basra. Only 12 seconds had passed. Omar was still reaching toward me. Hassan's eyes widened. Layla took one step back. The entire confluence activated. 9 visible gates. Gate 0. 10 flows. Network mind almost collapsed beneath the amount of information. Almost. Pressure from the Gulf pushed inland. Tigris flow pushed south. Marsh chi shifted sideways. Deep earth current rose beneath us. For 2,000 years, Gate 0 had been missing from the network. Now I understood what it did. It did not carry a source. It redistributed everything else. I placed both hands against the central pillar. Keeper's pulse activated. Tiny corrections. Not force. Gate 1 closed 3%. Gate 4 opened 7. Gate 6 reduced salt intake. Gate 9 finally moved. 1 centimeter. 3. 7. The chamber shook. Hassan shouted something. I could barely hear him. The network extended far beyond Basra. North. Baghdad. Mosul. West toward the Euphrates. South into the Gulf. Then farther. Much farther. Lines continued beyond Iraq. Across regions I had never seen. Fludgeless translated new labels too quickly to follow. Nile Node. Indus Node. Oxus Node. Great River Network. Baghdad was not one pond. Iraq was not one pond. The ancient system linked civilizations. The local cultivation world I had thought enormous was one damaged section of infrastructure. I almost lost concentration from sheer shock. Omar shouted, Yusuf. Right. Basra first. Cosmic water management later. I returned to the flow. Gate 9 reached 22 centimeters. Pressure equalized. 31. The red warning lines vanished one by one. At 40 centimeters, Salt Chi reversed toward the Gulf. At 52, the entire reservoir went silent. Not dead. Balanced. For the first time since arriving in Basra, Flow Sense detected no abnormal pressure. The confluence displayed one final message. Basra node stable. Network integrity, 13.1%. Confluence keeper recognized. Hassan sat down on the floor. Omar did the same. Layla laughed once, then covered her face. I remained standing because I was afraid my legs would not cooperate if I tested them. Then another presence entered the network. Far beyond Iraq. Something enormous noticed the restored node. Not hostile. Curious. A message moved through Fludgeless. Keeper candidate detected in isolated western branch. Regional qualification exceeded. Invitation route available. Destination locked pending restoration of 3 additional nodes. I stared at the words. Months earlier, First Basin had seemed impossible. Then Black Reed cultivators had seemed powerful. Then Baghdad's senior cultivators. Then Basra wardens. Now an ancient network had casually informed me that everything we knew belonged to an isolated branch. The ocean had finally appeared, and I was standing at the river mouth. The consequences in Baghdad unfolded while we remained in Basra. Nabil lost his water office certification permanently. Investigators recovered payment records connecting him to Black Reed. He avoided prison because he cooperated fully and because most of his crimes involved fraud, illegal extraction, and reckless endangerment rather than successful harm. The River Council ordered restitution. A great deal of restitution. Black Reed lost access to 3 licensed cultivation sites. Several members left immediately once they learned their secret pressure method came from misreading emergency testing instructions. That part spread through Baghdad faster than any official report. Nothing destroys a cultivation school's reputation quite like discovering its legendary technique is the spiritual equivalent of repeatedly pressure testing plumbing. Nabil sent me one letter. I expected anger. It contained an apology. Not a very good one, but real enough that I kept it. I did not forgive him completely. I also did not need to destroy him. His choices had already done the difficult work. 3 weeks after stabilizing Basra, I returned to Baghdad. Saffron Gate looked smaller. That surprised me. The place had nearly killed me. I had spent dozens of possible lives trying to understand it. Now I could feel every current inside before stepping through the entrance. The old Gate 7, once terrifying, opened smoothly beneath one pulse of chi. Omar leaned against the wall. Show off. That was maintenance. Your maintenance made the entire building glow. Efficient maintenance. Layla had been appointed coordinator for ancient network research. She pretended this was a terrible administrative burden while carrying 17 new notebooks. Hassan refused every official title Baghdad offered him. He returned to Basra and sent me a message containing only 6 words. Gate 4 is drifting, fix it. Apparently becoming a confluence keeper did not exempt me from actual work. Good. I began rebuilding the Baghdad node. Not alone. That mattered more than I expected. The original Yusuf had spent years believing weakness meant uselessness. The version of me from Earth had spent his career believing competence meant personally preventing every failure. The Echo Ledger had encouraged both instincts. If I could test every future, why burden anyone else? Because people were not burdens. Omar improved the mechanical governors. Layla reconstructed missing control language. Hadi Musa, the mediocre old canal cultivator from one of my simulations, existed in reality. Finding him took 12 days. He was extremely suspicious when I appeared at his home and asked to learn Keeper's pulse. "You are already stronger than I am. Strength is not the same as knowing what you know." That convinced him. Within 2 months, the Baghdad Water Office created a maintenance school around techniques cultivators had mocked for generations. Pulse control, flow balance, channel recovery, secondary circulation. Not glamorous. Enrollment filled in 4 days. I did not become its director. I had enough responsibilities. The echo ledger became quieter after the Confluence trial. One major simulation every 7 days. That sounded restrictive until I remembered I once thought 90 minutes was unbearable. Now I valued the delay. I prepared questions carefully. Each echo had purpose. One explored Mosul's dark northern node. Another followed a dead Euphrates branch. One lasted 4 simulated years and taught me how to maintain open current while sleeping. The imprint choices became stranger as my horizons expanded. Storm listener, stone reservoir, Jin tongue, current without source. I did not choose the highest ranked option automatically anymore. Power was architecture. Every addition changed the structure supporting everything else. 6 months after Basra, I reached the next stage beyond open current. The ancient system called it river body. My reservoir stopped functioning as storage entirely. Chi flowed through me continuously. A fifth basin cultivator from Baghdad challenged me to demonstrate the difference. I declined. He insisted. So I let him strike a training barrier I was maintaining. His attack shook the yard. My barrier did not move. He stared at it. I used 4% more flow. His attack disappeared into the ground. Nobody gasped. That pleased me. Omar simply handed me tea. Powerful accounting. Powerful maintenance. Same thing. Perhaps. The Baghdad measuring stone was eventually repaired. Layla convinced me to test again. It displayed first basin, then second, then fifth, then symbols nobody recognized. Finally it went dark. The clerk stared at me. I stared at him. He sighed. "You again." I apologized. We agreed not to replace the stone until someone discovered a scale large enough to justify the expense. The real change happened 1 year after my first simulation. Baghdad node stable. Basra stable. Mosul partially restored. A hidden Euphrates station near Nasiriyah reconnected after 4 months of work. The Great River Network opened the invitation route. Fludgeless showed a path extending east and south through currents no ordinary boat could enter. The destination remained beyond anything local records described. Layla believed it led to another regional keeper station. Hassan believed that whoever built the network would be annoyed. We had neglected maintenance for 2,000 years. Omar believed we should bring food. I considered his theory the most practical. The night before departure, I returned alone to the eastern floodwall. The Tigris reflected Baghdad's lights. A year earlier, I had stood nearby with a work order in my hand, afraid of a supervisor who thought I was disposable. He had been powerful because I possessed no alternatives. Then the echo ledger gave me alternatives. Too many. Lives where I ran. Lives where I fought. Lives where I hid. Lives where I died. Lives where I became someone I did not particularly like. I used to think the simulator's greatest gift was letting me avoid mistakes. It wasn't. Mistakes were where most of the useful information came from. Its real gift was allowing me to pay the price of failure somewhere that failure did not have to become final. But even that had limits. The Confluence trial taught me the part no simulator could. Eventually, you have to stop watching possible lives and choose one. Omar found me by the river. You packed? Yes. Layla says you forgot half your maps. I have measurement recall. She said you would say that. He handed me a bag. Maps, tea, bread, the brass wrench. I looked at him. You know we're traveling through an ancient spiritual transport network. Exactly. And you think the wrench matters? No. He smiled. But you do. Fair. At dawn, we entered the restored Baghdad station. Layla waited beside the control pillar. Hassan had come from Basra despite claiming he was too old for international nonsense. The network route glowed. Beyond it waited powers that considered my greatest local achievement an entrance qualification. I knew because I had used my final pre-departure simulation. That possible life lasted 23 years. I met cultivators who could divert rivers, keepers responsible for entire seas, cities built inside moving storms, people whose reservoirs made mine feel tiny. I also learned something comforting. None of them possessed an echo ledger like mine. None could integrate entire possible lives. None approached cultivation like hydraulic engineering. For the first time since seeing the larger world, I understood the scale correctly. I was not the strongest person waiting beyond Iraq. Not remotely. But I was no longer the weakest either. More importantly, strength was no longer the point. I understood systems. I understood failure. I understood that every enormous current was still made from smaller flows interacting. And I had become very, very good at finding the valve everyone else forgot existed. The route opened. Blue light filled the ancient station. Omar adjusted his pack. Layla gripped her notebooks. Hassan complained about his knees. I held the brass wrench. Then I stepped forward. In my first life, I had been an engineer studying water until water killed me. In my second, I learned that rivers carried power, futures had currents, and even destiny could flood when nobody maintained its channels. The echo ledger let me live thousands of wrong choices. The life that mattered was the one I finally stopped simulating. Source basis.